which is a suburb of Cincinnati. It's like on the east side of Cincinnati. Um, Tell us where you are zooming us from.
I'm actually right now staying with some family in New Jersey right now, but normally I stay in New York. But New York is kind of crazy right now with what's going on.
Right.
So
Tell
yeah,
us, tell us what is, you're a neurologist, correct?
yeah, I'm a neuroscience researcher.
Okay, I figured I was going
Uh,
to say it wrong, and that's very important too. I want you to be able to explain to us, like, what.
yeah, I can tell you a little bit about the difference between the two since you brought it up. A neurologist is actually a medical doctor, so like that's who you would go see. Like, let's say somebody who has a brain cancer, or like they fell and they hit their head and they have a concussion and they go to the hospital, or that's like their it's someone who has the MD behind their name. So that's what a neurologist would be. They go specialize after med school, like lots of years after doing like a general practice in general medicine. They specialize in neurology, to study the brain in medicine. So that's a medical doctor that would be considered a neurologist. A neuroscience researcher is somebody who studies in college, like they specialize getting their what's called a PhD. Um, and you don't have to have your PhD to be considered a neuroscience researcher. That's someone like me. Like I don't have my PhD yet. You can have your master's. You could even have your bachelor's and just do neuroscience research in the lab. So that's what a neuroscience researcher is. It's somebody who's like doing experiments in the lab. They could be studying animals. They could be studying, working with humans, doing all different kinds of experiments. Um, some of which I'll explain to you later on. So that's the difference between a neuroscience researcher scientist and versus a neurologist, MD, medical doctor. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Friends, if you have a question, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself. But after you're done, please mute again. Because just like in my house, there's all sorts of chaos happening in the background. So if you have a question, unmute yourself and you can ask a question, okay? So, friends, I can't see everybody's hands. Ryan, I can see yours. Would you like to ask your question?
Um, how long did you go to school for?
Well, I didn't finish. I didn't go to get my PhD yet. And I'm a very unusual case, but I just finished my bachelor's. But let's say let's say I finished my PhD hypothetically, right? So you would go to 4 years of undergraduate and you would get your bachelor's degree. And then what you could do is, if you get really good grades, you can go from your bachelor's to your PhD. And PhDs in the United States can go anywhere from 4 years to 5 years on average. So that's another 4 to 5 years after your bachelor's. So you're looking at on average about another altogether 8 to 9 years of doing school to get your PhD. And you'd be considered a doctor as well. So it's pretty cool. You can have everyone in your family and friends call you doctor. And by the way, I know we're talking about neuroscience, but you can get your PhD in so many topics. You can get it in history, you can get it in art, you can get it in religion, you can get it in so many different topics. And that's what's really cool about it. And you'd be considered like a professional student, and you get paid for it. Any other questions?
All right, Nazia, I've got a question for you. This is Anne. I don't know if you can see us or how you have your screen set up. So tell us, why did you want to become a neuroscience researcher?
I kind of fell into it. It's not what I wanted to do initially. I actually wanted to become a medical doctor. I totally changed. I changed subjects or fields, you can say. And what happened was, sometime in college, there was a class I didn't like, and I was like, oh, I gotta change my whole field. And when I changed my field, I got into psychology, and also I was doing some research. So in college, you get a chance to, and now actually, even in high school, you get to start doing research early on. And I got some experience, hands-on experience, and I got to work with a scientist, and I started doing neuroscience research. And through, like I said, through college, I just changed my major into psychology, and I got really interested, and I found this book, and it just got me so intrigued into these different topics. And that's kind of how it really happened. I kind of just fell into it, to be honest. It wasn't what I wanted to do. Sometimes that's how it happens.
That's how it happens for a lot of us. Simran,
you don't plan for these things, and to be honest, guys, that's what's really great about it. And I don't want you to think that life is perfect and that you have to plan and you have to know what you want to do. You don't have to know what you want to do. The best thing is to be an experimenter. Right now is the best time to just experiment different things, try out everything, and see what you like, see what you're good at, and most of all, see what makes you happy. And from that, see what you want to do. And you have plenty of time, trust me.
Yeah, we have 6, 7, 8-year-olds in our class, so we have nothing but time. Simran, what's your question?
Any other questions?
Simran, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. How long have you been a neurologist?
I'm a neuroscience researcher, but how long have I been doing that? Oh God. Let's see. Let me count. Probably since I got out of. I've been doing research since I was in college. I think different people will tell you different things about when you get counted as a researcher, but for me, I've been doing research for pretty much since college. I'm gonna say, oh, I gotta do some calculations on how old I am. Let's see. I'm gonna say 10 years, 10, 15 years, I don't know, on and off. Oh, and by the way, the other thing you should know about me, and something you can also do, is I didn't spend my whole life doing this. I took time off. I did other things. I had other jobs, because the reality is, sometimes what you love doing also doesn't always, it's not always available to you. So sometimes the jobs I wanted, like doing research, wasn't always available to me, or it wasn't always the best option for me at the time. So sometimes I had to do other jobs, and then I came back to it. So I did, like I said, I did other jobs at the time. So it was off for about 10, 15 years, I think.
All right, Nazia, I've got another question for you. What is something, or I'm sorry, let me run. How do you help people? Because we all help people in one way or another. How do you help people?
How do I help people? Okay. So I've helped people in different ways. So one of the ways, so I do very different things right now than what my research has been. Like my job right now is very different. So I'm going to talk about two different things. One of them is my research that I've done, and one of them is my job right now. So first, my research. Okay. My research has involved working with people in prison. Do you guys know what prison is? Is there a way for me to see that?
I think it is where you get captured in jail. Is that prison?
Yes, that's prison. And do you guys know why people go to prison
No.
or jail? Can someone answer that for me? Yeah, Mel. May? Is it May?
Yes.
Can you
Because
answer?
they did bad things.
Sometimes it's because they did bad things, yes. Sometimes it's because we're not sure yet and they are put in there. Emery, do you have an answer for me?
How old are you?
I'm gonna be 37. But thanks for asking that. Let me finish answering this part. Okay. So um, so I worked with people who are in prison, and one of the things I try to do in my research is figure out why people commit crimes, right? I figure out why they did what they did. And I want to know why they did what they did because I look at a certain kind of crime and I want to kind of help them, not them specifically, but other people to prevent them from doing it. And the way I do that is by talking to them. I talk to them about their past. I talk to them about their experience in prison. I talk to them about their feelings, about what they've been through, and I try to get them prepared for leaving prison because you're not always stuck in prison, right? Not everyone who's in prison stays there forever. So the people that I was working with, they were getting ready to leave prison because they were there for a certain amount of time and they were showed basically good behavior, right? They were not acting bad. They did everything they were supposed to do, and the people in prison, how do you want to say it? The police people basically said, okay, you had good behavior. It's time for you to go back home, right? So my job was to get them ready to go back home to their families. And so it was a very tough job because when you're in prison, you're not used to you're not used to the world outside anymore, right? Because the world outside is very different than in prison. In prison, you have to go to sleep by a certain time, you have to eat certain food, you only wear certain clothes. It's very restrictive. It's like punishment, right? And so all of these things are things that I did. And so that's one way that I helped people. Now I do something a little bit different. Now I work as an analyst and I work with a law firm. And the law firm helps people who have been hurt in in many different ways. One of the ways I will give you an example is, for example, is if they got hit by a car and they hurt themselves. And so this law firm looks at their injuries, right? And then I look at what happened to them from a science perspective, and I look at all of the medical stuff, right? And I say, wow, what happened here? What happened to this person? Is something missing? Whose fault is it? Did this person do this to themselves, or was it the person who hit them fault? So that's kind of what I do now. And I'm taking, remember what I said? I'm taking a break, or I took a break in the past from doing research. That's kind of what I'm doing now. But what's cool about my job is that a lot of the work that we do involves neuroscience cases where a lot of the people who get hurt, they end up actually hurting their brain. So I still work a lot on cases where people end up hurting their brain, and I get to work on studying. Studying the brain, and I work with other researchers who also work on these cases. Does anyone have questions?
Nazia, could you explain to the children exactly what neuroscience is?
Yes, I wanted to get to that. Yes. So first, I want to say, how many pounds do you guys think is the average brain? Can somebody tell me that?
1,000?
1,000? No. If you go like this, do you think your brain is 1,000 pounds?
I think it's like 5 pounds.
Who said that?
Me.
Who's me? May?
No, it's Alex Combs.
Okay. You're close. It's actually 3 pounds. Okay? So your brain is 3 pounds. So I want to start with there. So from the time you're a baby till sometime you're a childhood, your brain changes in weight, but it also changes in development. So I'm going to give you a little perspective on what neuroscience is, right? So neuroscience is basically the study of the brain and brain development. And what is development, right? What is development? Your brain has all these different parts to it. It has parts that control breathing. It has parts that control emotion. When you cry and you get angry, there's parts of your brain that control that, right? When you're hungry, right? There's parts that control that. And all these parts work together. And so neuroscientists, and lots of them, right, study all these different parts. And there's big parts. When I say big parts, some neuroscientists studied the brain on a bigger scale, meaning they study like the outer parts, but some neuroscientists study just like the little cells called neurons. Have you guys heard of neurons?
Maybe just the word, but nothing more than that.
Okay, so neurons are the cells inside your brain, and there's millions of them, and there's different kinds of them, and neurons send signals inside your brain, right? So, and you don't even know it. So anytime, let's say you see something, you're talking, everything, your movement, muscle movement, everything, your brain is sending signals constantly. Even at rest, your brain is active. Your brain is constantly working for you. and no one's paying it. Can you believe that? It's working for free. So neuroscience is basically the study of your brain, how it works, and what happens to it also when it's not working properly. And also how we can help it. There's a whole study of that. Because sometimes, actually a lot of time, the brain dysfunctions. Do we know what the word dysfunctions mean? No? Okay. So dysfunction means it does not work. It means something is wrong with it. And neuroscience researchers are trying to figure out what's wrong. For example, a lot of football players, they get hurt when they're playing. And they hurt their brain. And then we're not sure why, but something happens. Because when you hit your brain, right, you're damaging
Jack, can you turn
really
it down?
important parts of it, parts that are responsible for thinking.
Are you eating on the couch?
For intelligence.
You seem to be bringing a plate in from the couch to the kitchen.
You're damaging actually
Don't eat on the couch,
pieces,
okay?
like physical pieces.
You've been eating on the couch all morning. Your trash is on the floor, my
That
dear.
impacts.
So turn down just a titch for me.
What happens to the how do I say it? How it works. So we want to understand why that happens and how that happens and how we can fix it.
Auden, do you have our last question for Nazia? Would you like to finish us out here? Because we don't want to take up all of her time. She's probably at work this morning. Auden, how about, go ahead.
Sure. I don't know the question.
Well, I'm sorry, my dear. I saw you had your hand up.
I didn't.
No? You want to come up with one off the cuff? No?
Sure. Why did you become a scientist?
Why? I was, besides the fact that, like I said, I fell into it, but then I really just realized that, I liked it. Sometimes you just like things, and I was good at it. And there's different kinds of research. For example, I've also worked. I'll tell you one thing. There's two kinds of research. You can work with animals, and you can work with humans. I've worked with both. I've worked with animals and I've worked with humans. I prefer working with humans. I took a break and I worked with mice. It's a very different type of work because you can't really have a conversation with mice or any other kind of animal. And so I found that I like talking to people. And I liked hearing about their stories, and I liked learning from them. It's not that I was just getting information from them or giving them information or teaching them stuff. They were teaching me things, and I liked that. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate that. We're in our distance learning right now. We're all learning from home, and so having people like you come for our morning school is really helpful, and it kind of brings us a different perspective on what's going on in the outside world and what you do, and it just it's interesting for us to learn about all the different types of scientists out there. So, does everyone want to unmute and tell Nazia thank you? Thank you. All the thank yous.
Thank you.
All right, friends, you can mute yourselves again. And Nazia, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys.
We
Have a
appreciate
great
it.
day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.